Thank you so much for being here. We're thrilled to be able to share with you perspectives from the latest State of the Industry report that Harvard did in collaboration with CLOC. What we want to make sure that we're covering today is not just really the data, but about how leaders, veteran leaders in the industry are applying that data. How are they leveraging elements of what the findings from that survey is showing to make transformational changes in their legal department. So thank you again for being here, and we hope that this is going to be a practical session for all of you to take away with some tangible outputs. So Stacy and Greg, thank you so much for being here again. Can we fix that? Okay, hopefully we can fix that. The first point that I want to start off with today, and this probably resonates with everyone in the room, and it's the concept of legal demand. The question for all of you, and really for both of you here on stage, is we know legal demand is increasing. That means the need for in-house legal services is growing significantly, but the data is also showing that your spending, your budget, is not increasing at that same level, right? So ultimately, you're being asked to do more on a limited budget, limited resources. How do you make that all work? And so my first question to Stacy is, how are you addressing that gap? The reality that legal demand is increasing, you are with limited budget. What have you been doing in your department outside of technology, because we're going to talk about technology, to be able to address that gap?
So I think that this is a place where legal operations shines. And the reality is that in a period of time where demand is going up, but we don't have money to hire new heads or even for a lot of us put in that new technology, this is where kind of the rubber hits the road for legal operations. This is where efficient processes and taking work out of the system, understanding what you're doing, where you're doing it, and how you're doing it becomes critically important, because what we are doing is looking at every single thing we do and doing two things. Number one, we're trying to determine, is this something we should even be doing? Is there a way to do it differently or make it self-service, or however we're going to do it or not do it? But the other thing we're doing is we're really looking at is the process for doing that thing the quickest and most efficient way to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. I love that, Stacy, because I'm sure many of you can relate. The reality is so much of what legal departments are doing, we find, should legal actually be doing that? Clients love to push work to legal because legal departments have incredibly capable professionals. But a lot of times you do need to rationalize, especially in this environment where there's so much pressure for resources, to say, should we even be doing that? I love that. I love that you started with that.
And lawyers are taught to say yes a lot.
Yes.
You know, we say no to the risky stuff. But for a lot of stuff, we are taught or we are socialized that we are a service department. And I think sometimes we go too far with we're going to do it all and we're never going to say no to our business clients. But this is the moment where, as legal operations professionals, it is our job to step in there and help to craft a narrative that goes out to your business folks that talks about what is value. I think at this moment, everybody here should be socializing amongst themselves. What is value? What does that mean? And the only things you should be doing are things that bring value.
I think one thing that really surprises many law departments when we go and have these conversations is clients actually appreciate that. They actually appreciate that conversation to say, you know what, you really want your legal department focused on the highest value work. How do we make sure we do that? How do we partner client legal department to make that happen? Those conversations I find to be actually very, very well received. We're not talking about technology, right? It's start, because we're going to go there. We're going to go there. We're going to go there with Greg. But I do think this first concept of how do we think about the work? How do we think about the work that we do? And how do we ensure that our resources are focused on the highest value-added roles, pushing back on work that legal shouldn't be doing? And then the next question is, well, that is one aspect of it. What do we do? And the next is, how do we do it? And that's really where tech comes in. And I'm going to ask Greg, right? So we've got this gap. And yet we're seeing from the latest SOTI report that technology strategy is a key priority for legal operations leaders. And so, Greg, how are you at Workday using technology to help address this gap that we're talking about?
Well, I think that speaking of technology, I'm kind of missing the loud clangs of slot machines right now. Sorry, I don't mean to say that. But anyway, that's a good point. If you look at our business, and I think you all experience this, you can take the CLOC 12 model and try to apply everything. But what I would say is that what we do here is like we have a certain type of business and emphasis and premiums on where we need to focus. So when we look at our technology stack, I still think the technology stack, even with all of this AI stuff that's out there right now, it's a key important factor of your legal department. So e-billing, of course, e-discovery if needed it. How do you manage your, I would say, knowledge, which I was always a bit of an opponent to a knowledge management component to a legal department historically, but now with AI, it is now a huge slice of the pie, right, to be honest. And it's not your traditional knowledge management. It's data, it's content, it's everything there. So we're really, just like Anya said, just in the previous panel, we're placing a high premium on that. And looking at our technology, it's not technology to always do that big AI magic trick. It's technology to inform our lawyers to make the best decisions over time.
Yeah, I love that. Stacey, anything you'd add to the technology question?
You know, I think the way that we look at technology is really changing. It used to be that we used to look at these like really big, over-the-top implementations, and now I think we're getting into looking at, I have a specific problem, and now with all of these incredible vendors out here, we have the ability to buy a point solution to solve a specific problem, and we are no longer afraid to cobble together a couple solutions that will solve a larger problem because the technology has come so far and it works so well together. Yeah. And that's really, I think, enabling us to get to implement faster and implement more simply, and most importantly, be able to do it in a way that fits into it. But there's a budget for everybody and there's a technology for every budget.
Yeah, I love that. And again, that room is a real indicator of that point, exactly. There's so much out there in terms of resources. And I would put in a plug for the Harvard Law Department survey in collaboration with CLOC that we did, because if you were trying to figure out how do I start this technology journey, the survey has a ton of information that helps you rate, with rating information on success factors that different organizations have experienced with the different tools out there, the core tools, not just AI, that you may want to use as a reference, as a starting point to see what are users saying about the effectiveness of some of these core tools. So I would definitely use that as a point of reference for the department and for everybody here. When we think about legal demand, right, we're talking about inside, what you're doing, how are we doing it, and then there's also this other component of who are you doing it with. So that's the outside counsel. That is another critical component to legal service delivery, right? We need to partner with outside counsel in new ways. So what the data is though showing again is spending, law departments have indicated, I think 58% of law departments last year said their outside counsel spending increased. This year, the report says only 37% indicated an increase in outside counsel spending. Well, there's a pretty notable pullback. And clearly departments are figuring this out. Curious, Greg, what are you doing in your department specifically to manage costs without sacrificing the relationship? Because that is actually a critical component as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to put two elements together here. You specifically bring up outside counsel. Number one, Oyango in the opening presentation is saying, hey, we're at this inflection point. And he may have put that in a pejorative way, but I think it's true. We're at an inflection point of, hey, maybe our legal ops teams are actually getting this data, using some AI overlays to it, and getting some really fantastic insights out of it, right? And I'll just talk to a little bit about what we experience too is like, and I think everybody in this room has this, is the concept of a rate review with a law firm. and it's like everybody kind of like, oh, it's rate review season. Break out the Excel. Who's really good at V and X lookup? Like, how can we make the best out of this knowledge? And then it's hours and hours and hours of doing this processing work. And then at the end of the day, it's like, screw it, just 3% across the board. Let's get out of it. But I think what we're seeing now is, even when we talk about outside counsel spend retracting a little bit, is that like people are seeing the data, but also I think, like, for example, our CLO will say, hey, previously it was, if you need extra help, utilize your outside counsel spend. Now it's more like, if you need extra help, but there's a lot of work, lean more into technology, right? So I think it's a combination of these things. I could be wrong. I'm only speaking for myself. I don't know if I've seen a reduction in my outside counsel spend. But anyway, with saying, I think there's a lot of tools out there now that are making more in-depth insights and fast insights for legal operations people.
Yeah. Stacey, anything?
So I find it incredibly fascinating that there's been a reported drop in outside counsel, not drop, but there less people are reporting in outside counsel spend increase at a time when outside counsel rates are going up like they never have before. So I think it's worth talking about, well, what does that really mean? Why? How could that possibly be? How could those two things exist simultaneously? And I tend to think, when I think about this inflection point we're at, I think that what I am seeing in the industry is that we are at this complete change in how inside legal departments and outside counsel are working together. That we are asking them to do different work. We are asking them to do more targeted work. So I think that, and we're doing more in-house. We are leaning, I think most law departments are at least beginning the journey of doing more things in-house, even if it's the simple stuff. And so when you start to do some of the simpler stuff in-house, I think there's this natural trickle down where the top, we're pushing stuff down. So I don't think, I'll be interested to see next year whether or not that trend continues, because I have a feeling that it's going to level off again, that we are going to find different ways to work with our outside counsel. I don't think the spend is going to stay low. I think it will continue to rise a little bit. But it makes you think, like, you really have to be analyzing and understanding what is your outside counsel doing. And unfortunately, you have to be using the data, and it doesn't always have to be super complicated to do that. Even if you have the simplest ChatGPT, Claude, like Harvey, Lagora, whatever you're using, you can throw some data in there and get some analysis really quick.
I love that, because as we talked about earlier, when we talk about legal demand, a big part of it was your inside legal team. What are they doing? That same thing applies to outside counsel, right? As we think about kind of what you said, how do we leverage outside counsel more strategically? That's really ultimately the question. We want to be much more thoughtful about, we will always need outside counsel. There is an important role for outside counsel in this ecosystem, but how do we strategically think about what goes to outside counsel, what comes in? To your point, we've been doing this law department survey for the industry for over 20 years now. And in the beginning, that shift was 60-40. Year after year, 60-40. 60% outside, 40% inside. And it's been fascinating to see over the years how that has become more 50-50. We see some departments leaning even more on the inside versus the outside. So there has been an absolute shift in how legal services is being delivered and how the partnership with law firms, to your point, is different. Yeah.
And I think that we're at this moment, and admittedly, I practiced law for 23 years before I started doing legal operations. I've been in the industry 30 years, which don't any of you do the math, please. So, but I will say that for the first time this year, what I am seeing is an incredible trend toward partnership with our law firms.
Yes.
I have been in CLOC, this is my 11th CGI, and for a very long time, it was very much an us versus them. And there was always this feeling like, oh, they're law firms. We don't want to talk to them. We don't want to give them all our inside information or how we're negotiating rates or whatever we're doing. we are at a much different spot. And if you are not partnering with your law firm now and bringing them into the fold and acting like they are actually your business partner, then you need to talk to me afterwards, because that is one of the things we should be doing as legal operations director. We should be fostering a partnership, because you will get so much more for every dollar that you spend.
I love that. It really is a new way of collaborating that I think has shifted. You're right.
Yeah.
And again, the more you do that, the better the outcome, and it's a win-win. No session would be complete without a focus on AI. So I'm going to go there. Okay, I'm going to go there, and I want this to be more practical though. Yeah. Because the survey data indicated that 85% of law departments have some kind of an AI governance structure in place. They have an AI committee, they've got something in place, which is pretty notable. But I'm curious, Greg, from your perspective, what do you think are some foundational elements a legal department needs to have in place to actually deploy AI?
This goes back to what I said about that knowledge management component and even that data component in your operational function, right? A couple years ago, AI started coming along, and I think everybody wanted the AI tool, and that's fantastic. But what are you going to put in it, right? So we switched gears with a lot of convincing and a little bit of budget, and we did a deep analysis of our knowledge framework within the department, because probably like a lot of us in here, we have our litigation team keep stuff in here, our product team keeps stuff in there. We just needed a framework to go by to get us the sense of that. And so with that, we had a kind of an OKR to build an initial knowledge base of legal internal only components. And so I'm always trying to push just, hey guys, let's think about this a little more, rather than going out and buying something out there, or like I don't want to say the name, but I'll just say like a big solution that no one may use, but having a real practical and well-guarded approach in how we use those AI tools. So fast forward, and like what Anya said before, Workday acquired a big LLM solution called Sana, which really accelerated our use of it. And we rolled out a legal-only companion where we started populating that with legal knowledge. And the other thing I would say is foundational. That's fantastic, but remember, this is legal knowledge and legal content. It has to be up to date, trusted, all things of that nature. So the other thing that we are going to be implementing too is that concept of metadata, right? I think this is foundational. And if you haven't heard of Sally.org and the LMSS concept, we are starting to implement that now on all of our content. It's just a small little thing of metadata for each artifact you put into this knowledge base. Now, the big pushback was, back in the old days, whether you're at a law firm or iManage or a Net Documents, the attorney you have to fill out a form to upload a document to this database. And so our CLO was just like, don't talk to me about taxonomies. I don't want to hear it. Over the years, we've had consultants come in and they do a card game and they build out your file structure and all of this stuff, right? So what we did is we developed, using AI, code that recognizes what that artifact is, and it applies the commensurate Sally tags to it. And then from there, we upload it into the database, right? And so we can govern by tags, by metadata, but it also writes that information to a large index file, meaning that if we wanted to switch an AI solution, we could, because we have that data and that structure. It's a little techy, but at the end of the day, everybody here knows what all of that is and knows what those artifacts are. But we eliminated that old school way of, okay, what's this document? Yeah. Put this tag, put this name on it. It retrieves all of that metadata now, and it saves us a ton of time, right?
And Greg, you're talking about laying the foundational work, right? Which is really what this is about, because there are a lot of incredible vendors out there offering a lot in AI, and you should all meet them and learn from them. But a lot of times we find, I have had so many conversations even today, there is this urgency with AI. Everybody feels like they need to go out there and get a tool because then that's going to make them feel better. Because they're going to feel like, well, we're doing something. We're out there. We're doing AI. We implemented this. We could go back and tell our CEO, we are doing AI, whatever it is. But the data is showing adoption isn't as great as it needs to be, right? So curious, Stacy, Greg, where do you see the core of how do we bring adoption to the table, right? What are the use cases? How do we make sure that it's not just a nice, shiny new toy that we have that we don't really use, but it actually becomes the fabric of what the department is doing?
So I'm so glad that you brought up that piece of data, because I am hyper obsessed with that concept, which is everybody is talking about AI, but the data is showing that not that many people are getting into that journey. And I believe, my personal belief, having really listened to what people are talking about last year and this year, is that we are at, once you go out and you pick a tool, it doesn't matter. There's what did Kevin Clem said, there was like 750 legal vendors out there vying for your attention. Once you go out and buy a tool and you go to implement it, you all of a sudden realize that you have not gotten your data together. You have not cleaned your data. You have not even put all of your documents in one SharePoint folder, for gosh sakes. And you all of a sudden go, oh, wait a second, I can't do this, and now I got to stop, and it's going to take me 18 months to clean my data. So I think that what I'm seeing in the industry is, first of all, we sat here last year and all we talked about was AI, 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 and a lot of people felt very overwhelmed, and I think they felt very alienated from the conversation because they weren't there. I feel like the conversation has come to a different place this year, and most of us, if we're not already knee-deep in it, we are at least at the part of the journey we are starting to realize these are all the foundational things that we need to do. So as we are talking about this, I'm finding that more and more people are at least getting to the point where they're recognizing, here are the steps I need to take to get to that part of the journey. And so I feel like the conversation has really shifted, and that's part of what I think this data is showing.
Yeah. Greg.
Yeah, and also too is when we talk about implementing an AI, content, data, of course, but I also want to challenge everybody here, because then when we talk about the best thing you can do is make AI as part of your operational process. There are a few levers out here that we all know about: outside counsel spend, a rate review process, whatever that is, to make those things more efficient. But also, when we talk about implementing an AI use case, I think like harness is the big word right now, right? Don't just put AI on top of something just for putting AI on top of something, right? Because what are you really adding to it? I think that when we start from your foundational practices of what we've been talking about, and for example, we have call it a center of excellence or a knowledge base that we monitor all the things that are going into these agents. But overall, what you are doing is, if you think about it, take a step back, is we have to change the way we work too, right? And where that is, it's not just dumping documents into a shared drive or shared folder anymore. We have to be a more collaborative area as well, but also be mindful of what we're collaborating with too. Then all of that stuff will start finding your way about that and providing that adoption. I think that will be there.
Yeah, a lot of what I hear is, how do we make an AI become the fabric of how your department works and operates, versus the sense of, hey, we do our work and then there's AI, we got to do AI. Well, we're not doing AI. AI is just part of the way we operate. And so I'm really excited to see how we're going to see more of that, more use cases and stories around how do we bring AI to life in the everyday, the everything that we do as a department. We covered a lot. The State of the Industry report has so much, and what I would say here as we kind of bring some key takeaways from our two speakers is the role of legal operations in this environment. Everything we talked about, how do we address demand, how do we address resource management, technology, outside counsel, AI. Legal ops is at the core of that, meaning legal ops, all of the professionals in the room have the ability to drive that and transform your legal department on this maturity journey. And so my question to each of you as we kind of think about the key takeaways from this year's State of the Industry report, really for legal ops. What does it mean for legal ops professionals in this room? What does the survey data help them to think about in terms of ways that they can lean in to transform their legal departments? So I'll start with Casey.
So the first thing I would say is I really, really cannot encourage you enough to go find the State of the Industry survey. You all have access to it as CLOC members. It is really interesting, but what you will glean from it will depend on your particular legal department and where you guys are in your journey on regardless of technology or anything else. I really would encourage you to read it because you will draw your own conclusions, and I think that's really important. I also would encourage you to go to the Harvard LinkedIn page and watch. There's several podcasts that we've done on the survey that talk about different pieces of data than what we even talked about today, and also very interesting, and will give you some other food for thought. But I think when I look at where we are as an industry, I see a remarkable jump in maturity from last year to this year. And I see that where we are landing as a legal ecosystem is a place where operations has become critically important in a way that it never has been before. And for those of you who are new to the profession, you are poised to be at the beginning of a complete explosion. And it's really like a second explosion. We had a big explosion 10 years ago, but we've now come around to a point where you are really, really important. And so I would encourage you, as you're here this week, to talk to each other, talk to vendors. Even if you're not buying something, they don't care. They want to talk to you. But understand what's out there, and something will trigger something that you will take home with you to do something differently or learn something new. Everybody in this room, in this entire ecosystem here, has something that they can teach you. So I would encourage you to walk around with an open mind.
I think that's right. And I think when we look at the entire industry, this change we're talking about, I think historically too, legal departments tend to operate on their own inside of a corporate structure. With AI and these new technology solutions and these data solutions we're seeing, you can't do it alone. I would say reach out, not only, of course, your IT department, but build better relationships with your sales teams, with your procurement teams. All of those flows that come into the legal department, which are ripe for optimization and partnership, use what you are learning today in CLOC to embolden those partnerships and make them better. That's what we've learned, right? Especially when you have a company who wants to push more AI and will encourage you to do so. Say, I need a better flow into sales. I need this, and I think that's what's going to be the real power play moving forward.
No, I think that's such a great point. I want to make sure that we all appreciate that we are part of a bigger corporation. And making allies and partners within your organization will help you advance the legal ops journey, get more buy-in, get more support. I think that's absolutely critical. And the data, as we kind of wrap, it's been fascinating, as you mentioned, the journey of legal ops. Back 10 years ago, 10 years plus, it was very operational, very administrative. And the latest survey results indicated that strategic planning was one of the key areas of focus for legal ops. That has been showing, basically, that shows that the role of legal ops has really evolved significantly. And so when you go out there, back to your departments with your leaders, talk about how do we think about legal ops strategically to advance these initiatives that we're talking about that could ultimately transform and modernize your legal department, ways of working, to elevate the service delivery for your corporation. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to encourage you to participate in the Harvard Law Department survey. That is the data that allows us to create the State of the Industry report annually. You will probably be getting some email about that. There are QR codes that you can scan. We were hoping to have one on the screen, but it's not available. But your participation in the survey makes it real for us to be able to deliver the data.
And don't forget that on the app, on the CLOC app, you can participate in surveys. And this session and all sessions, you get Cloctopus game points for that. But your participation in that survey helps us as the CLOC board and the CLOC staff make CGI better and better every year. So please, please, please fill out your surveys. It's really important to us.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Greg and Stacy, for joining today. Thank you so much.